Bolette, you're very interested in this kid, right? There are few kids with such guts nowadays. Leah Sphinx's general duly chortled, his cigar puffing smoke. Kids who dared to make bold declarations in front of Lady Cashon these days were rare indeed. Outsiders called Cashon the iron-fisted prime minister, but that was a euphemism. Her opponents called her Medusa, the most dangerous snake woman in human mythology. Perhaps Aslan's cyborg zergs have some flaw. Bolette stroked his beard stubble. Oh, does that possibility exist? Dooley smiled. Although they were chatting, their attention was completely focused on the situation unfolding on screen. 11 cyborg zergs pounced madly on Wang Zheng. The generals, Zhang Zun, and the concealed ambushers who had yet to give up, all were shocked. Because until now, Wang Zheng stood as though petrified. Even if you were made of iron and steel, you would have been shredded. Humans needed time to act and react. Boom. Pong. 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 The 11 cyborg zergs suddenly clattered to the ground as though cursed. And they rolled on the ground like upended turtles, collapsing. Immediately, a hush fell on the forest. The wind blew through, and the leaves rustled and whispered, adding to the strangeness of the situation. Wang Zheng acted as though nothing had happened. He took his titanium blade and pierced the worms' heads through. The thigh's flavor was a little better, but a pity that these cyborg zergs had no meat left on their thighs. Then the portion where the head met the forehead was better. Food was the other issue for this survival. Eat everything edible. Of course, to keep one's energy up, bark and other things were not good choices. Wang Zheng cracked open the zerg shells with practiced efficiency, removing the disgusting goo. He took what looked like a tendon and speared it on his knife, then slowly returned to his original spot to barbecue it. Rotating the titanium blade's handle, a small bottle fell out. Inside was common salt. To the human body, this was necessary in most environments. Put some on, the flavor's not bad. Wanna try? Zhang Zun nodded mutely. Norden Star was also a planet that had been invaded by zergs, and had a long history. As sick captain, he had been trained in such survival skills. Only, Zhang Zun was unable to tuck in with as much gusto as Wang Zheng. What had just happened? How could it be? In an instant, all had fallen. This was something that only Ability X could achieve, not physical techniques. But there had been no Ability X response, and it was not possible to use Ability X. Even if he had used it, it could not be without making a sound. As Zhang Zun munched, his estimation of Wang Zheng continued to rise. Was this the greatest king of Elite Academy X? Perhaps those who thought of challenging him were naive. Wang Zheng must have used some skill, but even he, up close, could not detect it. A few more ambushers disappeared. Perhaps they knew their limits now. Bolette laughed. This punk's getting more and more scary. Back then at IG, Wang Zheng had still been green. Although he had been strong, his aura was not concentrated. He had overdone it at times. At SIG, his control was flawless, and it was impossible to guess his mind. Suddenly, Bolette was not too sure of what Wang Zheng was thinking. From one side, Dooley tapped his cigar. Looks like the Aslan people are in for a tough time. Although neither knew how Wang Zheng had done it, they could confirm that Wang Zheng had found a way to deal with the zergs, and very effortlessly. As a mechanist, Wang Zheng was very familiar with mechanical commands. Wang Zheng was as good as anyone in his understanding of the zergs. All kinds and types. The key was that his understanding was above average. After analysis, Wang Zheng was very clear of the working principles of cyborg zergs. His senses could determine the position of the chip. All he needed was a subtle energy disruption to wreck everything. Such cyborg zergs were a complete failure in Wang Zheng's eyes. If it was hoped that these things would replace Abyss zergs to fight in the Abyss, the results would be painful to watch. Perhaps the zergs would not discover it immediately, but their propensity for learning and discovery were definitely capable of finding this flaw. With their multiple attack patterns, they would evolve to have similar attacks without much difficulty. He looked at Zhang Zun staring mouth agape, as though he was some monster. Wang Zheng smiled. A technological flaw. They have a command node in their bodies. Just wreck it and you're done. Wang Zheng made a finger gun. Dooley and Bolette exchanged looks. Sounded easy, but first you had to locate it. The command node was hidden well, and while his ability X was inhibited, how would he proceed? Physical attacks would be ineffectual, and violent shocks would be hard-pressed to target it as well. But Wang Zheng had made it sound easy, and did not even treat it as a secret. Zhang Zun knew that this was confidence. Even if he had known the principle, he would be unable to do it. There was more than just one or two problems here. The way he saw it, cyborg Zergs were monsters, and he could see it no other way. Will the Aslan military work on this problem? That's beyond our concern. Get some sleep. I think we can expect another busy night. Saying so, Wang Zheng leaned on the tree and shut his eyes. He widened his perimeter. They had all retreated. Of course, he did not think that these people would just vanish like that, just that they were changing tactics. Solo challenge. Wang Zheng would not be that naive. Perhaps in the future his opponents would be completely unscrupulous, but he was looking forward to it. But the remaining week was very calm. Wang Zheng had not been attacked. Of course, leaders on Island A had fought, but it was fairly moderate. The weaker ones would prioritize hiding, and it was hard to find them. And even if they were weaker, that did not mean they were helpless. After all, it was overly strict that a leader's elimination would eliminate their team. Those who were stronger were even more prudent, because it was easy to get tripped up in such an environment. The chances of a sneak attack were amplified, and they were the most obvious target. Alliances had started to form, but all sides were exceptionally careful before engaging. These SIG leaders were all very clever. Even if you defeated the most leaders, and took the most tags, what did that count for? Nothing at all, besides exposing your own abilities to the maximum, and treading on many toes. If you lost in the main competition, there was nothing to resent, but in such a place, they saw each other all too frequently. Even the strongest groupings were in name as well, just to ensure that they could enter the main competition. A few strong groups had begun to emerge. 1. Aslan 4-man team. Aslan people love to lie too much. Di Maria, Lin Feng, Zade, and Lear. It was said that the enemy of my enemy is my friend. Such thinking was not accurate. The key was Lear himself. He had taken the initiative to approach these three. Di Maria and Lear were not on bad terms, as they both had Wang Zheng as a common enemy. Additionally, Lear's amiability power had put the Aslan people at ease. In just a few days, Lear had not only ingratiated himself with Di Maria, but had also found common ground with Lin Feng and Zade. Honestly, Wang Zheng was a loser. They could not stand losers turning the tables. But Lear was from an old family on Earth. Deep down, the Aslan people were very respectful of rich histories and civilizations. Besides, Lear was capable, and his aura was neither weak nor outstanding. The Aslan people hated bootlickers, nor those who were arrogant. They liked Lear's type, who could support without stealing the limelight. All four had a tag each. Given that half were already eliminated, this was enough, and the members' side could be even more at ease. The Saruman Snake Battle team could only dream of making it through a month. First, they secured their own passes. Next, they would deal with Wang Zheng. But Lear had put a different opinion up, which was to wait for the last few days before making their move. What if Wang Zheng is finished off by others? Zade evidently wanted to finish off Wang Zheng personally. Lear smiled. Di Maria, given your understanding of Wang Zheng's physical abilities, does he look like someone who dies easily? Di Maria shook his head. In normal circumstances, one-on-one, no one is his match. Lin Feng and Zade did not show discontent, and maintained neutral expressions. Clearly, they would not take Di Maria's judgment wholesale. At this level, the opinion of others was just a reference point. Di Maria did not argue. He knew that of the three, his ability was the weakest. Even though his own ability X quality was the highest. Di Maria does not exaggerate. I know that Brother Lin and Brother Zade have amazing physical proficiency. First, let us not quibble over strength. More importantly, Prime Minister Kashan's intention. Have you thought about it? Lear asked smilingly. This gave all three pause. Evidently, Wang Zheng's conduct was filled with rebelliousness and arrogance. Compounded with the gossip of the past, this had fired all the Aslan people. But this was Aslan, and SIG was hosted by Aslan. Was Kashan's intention for them to act? Of course not. Anybody could do so, but Aslan should not. At least, they should not act first. The one to stick out their neck first should not be one of them. Even if they defeated Wang Zheng and eliminated Saruman Snake, would that help Aslan's reputation one bit? All three were wise people. Prime Minister Kashan was cognizant of this process. And the other countries' generals were also watching. Technically, they were competing in fighting ability, but they also tested each fighter's intellect and ability to see the larger picture. This foresight was not limited to the situation here. Those who were limited thus were pawns at best. Status might differ, but the prudent would cast their gazes far. Even if they were presently pawns, the day would come where they could shrug off their fate. The Aslan people were clever. That was not in question. Her Highness Aina was their soft spot, and she would make them rash. But Lear had reminded them, and they knew their position was wrong. Prime Minister Kashan had to be planning to use this event for some purpose. If they made their move, it would be ruined. Like Lear said, even if they snatched glory, and salvaged the image of their princess in the eyes of the Aslan people, they could not be the first to make an unthinking move. Of course, this, first, referred to the first capable person. Lear, of course, knew that they wanted to act. And they had their own interest, which was to attract the princess's interest by defeating Wang Zheng. How could a loser be fit for the princess? Even if no one said so, they would slink away with their tail between their legs. Lin Feng and Zade were exceptionally sharp. Although they were bloodthirsty, they would not needlessly push the issue, and in fact would not kill Wang Zheng. And Lear was clear of their mindset, so persuading them was easy. Lear's goal was obviously not to help Wang Zheng. On the contrary, this was a chance to let Wang Zheng never cross his sight again. If Aslan's group did not move, arbiters Aragorn and Manalasuo's Jondi Lilac would definitely act. The Atlanteans, unclear. But given Lear's judgment, one of these two acting first would increase the odds of success. Jondi Lilac and Chichin Nakai had already discovered Wang Zheng's location, and even seen him fight. But neither had made an attack on him. Even at their level, they could smell danger from Wang Zheng. It was not that they would definitely lose if they fought, but the possibility was there. One thing they had to admit was that they had their own responsibilities. The consequences of failure were not something they could bear. For example, Jondi Lilac knew that General Bolette was watching. If he won, all was good. If he lost, then he would have to shoulder the responsibility. Of course, it was inevitable to sustain injuries in taking out Wang Zheng. Which was why Chichin Nakai was needed. He did not want to be sneak attacked by others. In Wang Zheng's vicinity, more than 20 lurked. Most of these guys already had tags, but were here not for more tags. Among them, the most dangerous was Gonzalez from the Darkness Empire. The Darkness Empire's soldiers' personality was well known, and such a person was respected from afar. If he found a weakness, he would not hesitate to finish him off. Suddenly, the situation was extremely dangerous. Wang Zheng was there, bold as brass, but who first? Beside Wang Zheng's campfire were 5 tags, just left there. The other 4 had come 2 by 2, and were now lying in a hospital. The following challengers would not meet as kind of fate. The Saruman Snake battle team was facing a lot of pressure. Undoubtedly, he needed a lot of tags, and he would not decline those who came. Zhang Zun had really become the field sweeper for Wang Zheng. He was unafraid of danger, and did not leave. But the last few days of battles had left a deep impression on him. But up till now, he still could not see Wang Zheng's better. It looked like anyone outside of the top 20 did not even need to think of touching Wang Zheng. In this week, Wang Zheng's emotional control had also impressed Zhang Zun. Panicking resulted in overexpensive energy, while being too relaxed gave the enemy a chance. But Wang Zheng managed this perfectly. This could be some special ability, but at his level, he could not comprehend it. Perhaps this was what the unification of mind and body meant. Each day, Wang Zheng spent a majority of his time practicing the primordial regression technique. But he had not foreseen one thing. The military randomly dropped supplies, as though they did not want hunger to affect their endurance. Not just Wang Zheng, but all the fighters did not have a food problem, if they were discerning and resourceful enough. Those like Wang Zheng could completely ignore it. It might be a bit disgusting at times, but there was not much difference. The bottleneck of training was situation and opportunity. Kashan was someone who gave Wang Zheng pressure, and he could feel the current situation gradually improving. He was closing in on the third tier of the primordial regression technique. The holistic use of the 5 elements had also set good foundations for entering the third tier of the primordial regression technique, and what was needed now was huge quantities of supplements. Wang Zheng was not at all worried. It would come, because these people could not resist. But Wang Zheng had not expected the first person to be Mars. Wang Zheng knew that Arbiter's Warrior Soul College and Iron and Steel College were at odds. Both schools were backed by families that were political rivals. If they acted, the first would not be Mars, no matter how you looked at it. One-on-one, Wang Zheng was not afraid of anybody. But the problem was that this was a gauntlet. And Mars was definitely someone capable of wearing you out. Even if Mars was not a leader of the top 10 seeded teams, any who had seen the Greatest King competition knew how terrifying this person was. The Asura battle team still had the power to compete for first place. Bolette watched the screen with a big smile. From the side, Arbiter's General Sarabujal watched on as well. This General Sarabujal was from Warrior Soul College. I heard that Arbiter's Iron and Steel and Warrior Soul are like night and day. Seems like the rumors might not be true. Bolette smiled. Sarabujal showed no reaction. This was classic of most arbiters, and more so the older they were. Mars, not bad. Sarabujal said that not because Mars was about to fight, but as an evaluation of Mars' ability. Everyone knew of the devastating competition between Iron and Steel and Warrior Soul. My second disciple died at his hands. That left Bolette speechless. Manilasua was learning from Arbiter, but some things could not be gleaned. Arbiter's cruel teaching methods would cause trouble when grafted elsewhere. Sarabujal, this battle will be a good opportunity to see Wang Zheng's ability. Lin Hong smiled slightly. Bolette rolled his eyes at Lin Hong. You Aslan people are too sincere. Lin Hong was not angry, but kept his smile. Personally, I'm not biased against Wang Zheng. On the contrary, he used to be a student in the Royal College, and was my student as well. But concerning the princess, I have no authority. But I don't think he's someone who can't handle himself. Bolette had no reply. For someone to elicit such an appraisal from the Aslan Royal College's head was indeed something. After all, Wang Zheng was the opponent of Aslan's Royal College, and even an enemy. Not even the head could meddle in what his students wanted to do. Emotions and reality were different. All three present were clear, but Bolette just wanted to purposely put Lin Hong in a tight spot. Sarabujal nodded seriously. Seeing Mars, Zhang Zun also knew that a real opponent had come. This person was Wang Zheng's greatest enemy at Elite Academy X. In truth, Asura's chances were 70% in a best of 3. After one battle, Saruman's snake would be wasted. Of course, the elimination battle was where one's skill level could be truly seen. In actual battle, no one would give you a best of 3. People did not have 3 lives. Wang Zheng shrugged. You're here for the show too? Mars nodded. Perhaps I'm taking advantage of your situation, but I don't have much choice. I lost in the Greatest King competition, and the pressure on the Iron and Steel College is immense. I have to do something. Wang Zheng smiled. I feel like what you really want is an all-out battle before I am injured. Mars started, then barked out a laugh. Sorry, but that is indeed the case. Even if I hadn't come, others would. Might as well be me. Victory at SIG was, of course, important. Victory could bring many things. But in truth, the Asura battle team did not have many expectations. This was the advantage of the Van family. Obtaining good results was important, but if they could break through and improve their power, then that was even more important than battle results. Mars chose this time because it was the only time that Wang Zheng would not run and would have to face him with all his strength. He would not even dare to get hurt, because there were many waiting who could injure him. If Mars was in his shoes, he also would not know how to deal with it. This brought to mind a phrase, femme fatale. Out of all disasters, he had to get involved with the Aslan princess. In this world, there was not a single imperial family that held such significance. Given Wang Zheng's status and circumstances, he could not bring anything to the Aslan Empire. Being together with the princess would not benefit either side. All the while, Mars had held Wang Zheng in high esteem, but he had found his greatest weakness. Seemed like the hero had stumbled on the girl. Zhang Zun was hyped. He would not have believed his luck even in a dream. In truth, he had challenged Wang Zheng filled with conflict. At the end, he had mustered his courage and come with an attitude of learning. But he had gained more than he had imagined, and now he could even watch Mars, possessor of the Heavenly Overlord attack, challenge Wang Zheng. At the same time, he really wanted to know if Wang Zheng's physical techniques were stronger than his ability X. One had to know that the Heavenly Overlord attack was comfortably within the top 10 arts of the Milky Way Alliance, and was the earliest one. Zhang Zun, put a bit more distance between us. Wang Zheng warmed up his body. All right then. It's been a week, and these guys are cowards. Let's work up a sweat. Mars looked at Wang Zheng. At this time, Wang Zheng seemed different from when he was at Elite Academy X. Perhaps this was Wang Zheng's other side. Mars did not feel like Wang Zheng was flexing, but instead made his own preparations. Zhang Zun did not try to act up. Normally, physical techniques would not result in powerful area of effect attacks, but it was hard to say for these two. In the last week, his wounds had completely recuperated. Due to his excellent mental state, he might even be better off than when he first started. Mars bowed slightly and then a wave of pressure instantly roiled towards Wang Zheng. Wang Zheng stood still, channeling the primordial regression technique. His entire person was like a boulder in the current. He could feel Mars attacking with both spirit and body. Without question, Mars was top class in talent, experience, and endurance. This also made his Heavenly Overlord attack a true master. He had already pulled back, but Zhang Zun still could not catch his breath. This was a blow to him. At IG, the gap had not been this big, but Sig tested them in too many ways. And this distance was frightening. Mars gathered his focus. Wang Zheng was standing easily, but there was not a single weak spot. He tried using his aura to rush the opponent, but it had no effect. At this time, he was hard-pressed to back down. The Heavenly Overlord attack was about advancing, not retreating. He could only increase the power, aiming to pressure Wang Zheng. In an aura battle, he had made the first move, which was advantageous. He might not be able to completely suppress the opponent, but he only needed the upper hand to attack. If he could force the opponent to attack, that was also to his advantage. He had given both options A and B, but Wang Zheng chose C. The Heavenly Overlord attack's ferocious aura parted around Wang Zheng. Just a few short minutes after Mars arrived, people had streamed towards them. It was unknown how or what mark was left, but clearly all who came here were capable. When they started battling, 6 people were already concealed in the forest. Mars' expression was not as composed now. He grew graver and graver, because he realized that he had made an error. During their battle at the Greatest King competition, he had thought that he understood Wang Zheng's power, including Wang Zheng's physical technique. But now in their clash, he realized that the problem was different. Separated by mecha, there were too many factors affecting the victory, and ability X was the main factor. Physical technique was a fundamental skill. And now it was different, purely a bodily resistance. The Heavenly Overlord attack had gradually climbed to its peak state within Mars' body. It was now the best time for Mars to attack, but Wang Zheng still stood like an immovable mountain, at ease. As his own aura swelled, Wang Zheng did not counterattack, but continued to maintain a relaxed state. If it were him being suppressed, he would definitely have answered with a savage aura in reply, but Wang Zheng had chosen another approach. A tooth for a tooth was undoubtedly most straightforward. Such a way of using one's aura was unheard of. Wang Zheng's gaze flicked, and the pressure on Mars increased. That was the position that Mars was about to move to. The aura reached its peak, and it was the best time to attack. Even though he had not suppressed Wang Zheng, Mars had to act, otherwise, the aura would weaken and his confidence would be shaken. Logically, He was clear, and he was very experienced. He had to act, but his long experience in fighting life and death battles told him that if he attacked, he would, without a doubt, lose. Mars was excited. In terms of ability X, he was already at the peak. Earth rank ability X was divided into 5 levels. Olivius could be considered to be at the first level, while he and Wang Zheng were probably at the second level. Once you reached Earth rank, the rest was just a matter of time. But his Heavenly Overlord attack had been stagnating for a period of time. He needed a special opponent. Looked like he had to get serious now. Mars' left fist reached out. There was another person in the forest. An arbiter. Aragorn from Warrior Soul College. He watched emotionlessly as the two battled. That Mars was the one who had killed his junior. The competition amongst arbiters' military colleges was accident-prone, and the loss of control was due to overwhelming power on both sides. Without a fight to the last, victory could not be decided. No other country would pursue this course, but arbiter must see one triumphant. This was also the reason that they were mighty, the strong devoured the weak. Hatred was a given, but the arbiter way of exacting revenge was to surpass and dominate. To let your opponent watch themselves be overtaken. Any other way of victory within arbiter would be accompanied with the derision of the entire nation. That was a life worse than death. Surpass Heavenly Overlord attack, and defeat Mars. That was what Aragorn must do. Of course, that Wang Zheng needed finishing as well. After all, Aslan's marriage had political motivations, and could also fit arbiter's needs. Their mighty martial force had rigidified arbiter. In international relations, they were far behind Kashan, who wielded both carrot and stick as smoothly as a fish in water. That was why they had to change their image. This was not something that words alone could achieve. They needed a great opportunity, which Aslan had provided. Everyone understood each other. In terms of presence, Mars completely held the upper hand. The Heavenly Overlord attack's savagery was top class. It sought the strongest attacks. In any era, offense was king. And Wang Zheng's arts belonged to either the balanced attack and defense, or counter-attack types from Earth. In practice, such arts, such an attitude, and such a life were all unsuited to the current planetary environment, and failure was guaranteed. But this Wang Zheng was indeed unusual. How did he part the presence without resisting? Aragorn's eyes glowed with a faint red light. The red light seemed to penetrate Wang Zheng. Rotation. Wang Zheng's energy did not meet it head-on, but instead diverted Mars' energy. Aragorn's mouth quirked with the hint of a cold smile. Skills, skills, skills. Of course they were important, but being obsessed with such tricks would compromise the all-important power. What he wanted to see most was how much Mars had progressed. Mars stepped up and roared. This was a technique to elevate his aura. But Wang Zheng saw that Mars was not just exhaling and attacking, but vigorously sucking in a breath. His eyes shone. Heavenly Overlord attack, inner binds. If it had been Olivius, he might have attacked already. This was a matter of refinement. Mars' experience and understanding of the arts far surpassed Olivius. In that situation, even if he had boosted his aura and attacked, the odds were not good. All the while, Mars had his doubts about many of the abilities that Heavenly Overlord attack brought. After all, he was an arbiter. But against Wang Zheng, those attacks suddenly seemed completely different. This inner binding had instantly allowed Mars to turn the tables. His ferocious energy formed a cycle, and the energy that Wang Zheng had spun to divert gathered centrifugal force and flowed back to Mars. Wang Zheng was slightly taken aback as well. Seemed like he had underestimated Mars. At this moment, Wang Zheng half squatted and spread his legs. Ping! With a loud sound, they vanished almost at the same time, appearing in the middle. Neither's stance had changed much. Mars had thrown a chopping blow, while Wang Zheng had let loose a square punch. Boom! The two waves of energy collided, but did not separate, instead fusing. Mars understood Wang Zheng. The finesse of his physical technique was sublime, or he could not use such power in this way. That was why he could not play technicalities with Wang Zheng. He had to use the awesomeness of the Heavenly Overlord attack and force Wang Zheng to duke it out with him head-on. He would use greater brute strength to subdue Wang Zheng. Under the impact, Mars moved even quicker, sharply boosting his aura, and sending another straight punch out. He was not trying to gain the upper hand, but was seeking to pin Wang Zheng. He had chosen a sticky presence as well. The Heavenly Overlord attack was not a brainless attack. Even the most overwhelming techniques required some presence of mind to wield. For example, in many situations, one had to use stick auras. Aragorn was not surprised. Mars was this good because his Heavenly Overlord attack level was clearly Tyrant's word arts level. But he had a different sinister feel to it. This was also why his own junior had died in battle. He had been drained to death. Both were of equal power, but Mars' Tyrant's word arts brought a cunning softness with it. His ferocious countenance, and even that damned ability X, all lulled people into misperception. This Wang Zheng seemed to be a proponent of technique. That was why restraining him and then overwhelming him with brawn was the best choice. Assuming that Wang Zheng had not used his own agility and technique had been a mistake. One should know that Mars' explosiveness and agility were not shoddy themselves. Boom, boom, boom. 6 consecutive punches, and shockwaves flew everywhere. The soil flew, and debris rocketed. Wang Zheng was still in his half-squat, his hands postured unmovingly, fending off Mars' savage attack. He could not shrug free, but he did not let Mars achieve his goal. Mars wanted to force Wang Zheng to pit brute strength against him, but Wang Zheng used a technique to shed energy. If you could successfully shed such savage attacks, all was well. But if you could not shed it off successfully, then your defense failed, and you would die in a punch. Wang Zheng's both hands were in front of his chest. With each move, he dispersed Mars' terrifying power. Mars' attacks became more and more frenzied, until his fists seemed to disappear. But Wang Zheng's defenses were still impenetrable. It looked languid, but he was actually moving just as quickly. After a few seconds, Mars had unleashed all 36 punches, and his energy swelled in his body. All he had to do was endure the excruciating pressure, but Wang Zheng instead brought it down a notch. Everyone held a breath when using continuous attacks. This breath could be used up. If it was mecha, the gap was very small, because of the delay in mecha movement. To exploit this gap was very difficult. But this was different for close combat. Fists connected instantly. In that breath, Wang Zheng's palm lanced out. A break. It had not even been half a second. All proficient martial arts practitioners understood the importance of breath. Breathing techniques were the basis of martial arts. This meant that one had to master one's breathing before one could control the pace. Under evenly matched circumstances, defensive breaths could hold out longer than the attacker. This was a chance. Only, the people who could capitalize on this were few and far between. Aragorn smiled coldly. This Wang Zheng was not just anybody. His hand cleaved onto Mars' chest. If Mars still had his ability X, perhaps this attack would have been ineffectual. He could enter an invincible battle state. But now that the flow of mental energy had been completely cut, Wang Zheng, let alone Mars, was helpless. This blow was very deadly. But Mars completely ignored it. The moment he connected, Wang Zheng knew something was off. Mars' flesh seemed to be alive. His cleave seemed to stick to his flesh, and the force shook his muscle and then dissipated. Aragorn had no idea how Wang Zheng had smoked his way to the greatest king, given that he was so naive. Even before the Heavenly Overlord attack practitioners learned to attack, they first learned to take hits. Compared to attacking, their superhuman constitution was the scarier one. There was a legend that the Van family had used other methods, even ones forbidden by the Milky Way Alliance. But that was true for many. People would always try new ways of gaining power. As long as they did not turn into beasts and lose their humanity, everything else were just methods. Ability X, martial arts, genetic modification, body strengthening, they were all the same. In the Arbiter military, from the common soldier to the strongest fighter, everyone understood one basic principle: there would definitely be enemies stronger than you. As you attacked, you could not defend. Which was why to survive, you had to have a resilient body and an indomitable spirit. This was at the heart of Arbiter strength, and the Iron and Steel College and the Warrior Soul College were the epitome of this. It was said that Mars had an immortal body, and it was the key to winning that big battle. But it had not left him completely unaffected, which was why Mars had been sent to Elite Academy X. After all, leaving one of the main figures in the Warrior Soul College dead was still news that needed some time to swallow. Mars' body gave an oof. Wang Zheng's capitalizing move had been completely ineffectual, and Mars' both hands had already taken hold of Wang Zheng's neck, cross-lock. The rare mineral corridor line. Tita Star and Maklu were proceeding with various preparations with top secrecy. Progress was excellent. It could be said that the entire fleet was prepared, save the breath of the east wind, which Yan Xiaozu was supposed to take care of. This east wind was difficult to create, but the other aspects of the route could not slow or stop. Time marched on steadily, pressuring the Titan Chamber of Commerce. For some matters, you had to strike while the iron was hot, or variations would occur. In the end, the designation of the route saw Yan Xiaozu in charge of a stretch with 6 federations, 3 empires, and another 3 independently governed planets. In all, he needed to obtain 12 shipping special customs permits. This was a matter that any route entrepreneur had to settle. The Milky Way Alliance permit had no effect here. Each star's affairs had to be negotiated with the business owner. Only, without these customs permits, the route could not enter the business consortium and commence operations. But up till now, out of 12 countries, Yan Xiaozu had not managed to obtain a single one. Talks with a few major shipping companies had broken down as well. From the get-go, their conditions were bad and worse. In the end, they had taken up the offer of the new time shipping company that Laurel had introduced, 50% for 50 years. It was the best offer. Beaten down? Fine. Vicious competition? Fine. This was business as usual. Obtaining the Milky Way Alliance permit was useless. With all the countries, they spoke of cooperation, but as long as you did not meet their conditions, they would drag the issue. They could afford to, but the Titan Chamber of Commerce could not afford to. And the route could not afford to. In truth, the way these countries saw it, they were not worried about the Titan Chamber of Commerce obtaining the permits. They completely snubbed Titan Chamber of Commerce. That was the root of the issue. KO Group's influence was limited to the solar system, and weakened the further one strayed from the solar system. As for Tita Star, there was even less influence to speak of. The way that other federations saw it, they were just a mining planet. A mining planet should just honestly ship its ore. What influence? This was like the Arabian countries during the era of petroleum. Once the fossil fuel sources had been replaced, they had no value to speak of. Even in the era where fossil fuels were king, they were only slightly more prosperous, and had no autonomy at all. On this point, Yan Xiaozu understood well. All this while, the Titan Chamber of Commerce had progressed smoothly, and this had caused Yan Xiaozu to forget the basic nature of business. And at this point, it was very difficult to turn back. It was not that he did not wish to make concessions. But the moment they began to concede, the Titan Chamber of Commerce would completely be at their mercy. If the first step went this way, then the opponent would not hesitate to increase their demands subsequently, and would eventually take a hand directly in the business. Even an idiot could see that far. Build a relationship. That was a daydream. In business, greed only grew. Swallowing poison did no good for one's thirst. On one point, Yan Xiaozu was exactly like Wang Zheng in character. Unsatisfied. The more that it was said to be the Milky Way Alliance rules, that everyone followed thus, that one had to do things properly, the more he was discontent. When there was a will, there was a way. But this way was lost on the cowardly and the ignorant. Or there might be a new way. He had to think, he had to find it. Yan Xiaozu was a resourceful person. Since the shipping companies were not cooperating, he had thought of the stupidest method. He had talked to all the stars individually. Although it looked like a fool's errand, Yan Xiaozu had some tricks up his sleeve. Laurel was at her wit's end. This time around, she had used much of her power, but things had continued to develop in a way that she had not expected. There had to be a reason, and the results of her intelligence gathering had left her disheartened. Margate Interstellar Airline had used extensive resources and undercut itself in order to gain the power of many major shipping companies. This was not only about the petty matter of the space program, but they were gunning for the motherlode that this transport route represented. It was revenge, with money included. Margate Interstellar Airline has already sent a high-level delegation towards Maklu. When the news came back, Laurel had no more reservations, but called a meeting. In an instant, everyone understood. The reason why the major shipping companies were so difficult, why the shipping competition had been so intense. Even if it was a lose-lose situation, there was no reason for everyone to stonewall them. Margate Interstellar Airline was determined to win this time. And they stood a good chance. Tita Star's side was relaxed. The Lan family and Mu Sen had expressed that they could wait, and should not be hasty. The quality and loyalty of their partners was the most important factor. Yan Xiaozu was very grateful, and this was not just about his dignity. In the past, both sides had worked closely and built profitable foundations, and they had remembered their time together. But on Maklu's side, Yan Xiaozu was completely blindsided. All he knew was that Wang Zheng had been there on a Milky Way Alliance mission before, and then struck up a friendship with someone of authority. But no matter what, an old proverb came to mind. Friendship, in the face of profits, was as useful as the virginity of a prostitute. Even if Maklu was not currently pointing fingers, they could not pretend that nothing was wrong. They had to prove their meticulousness for the relationship to be long-lived. If they could not show results, then why would anyone continue to support them? It was calm now, and possibly the calm before the storm. When the time came, it would be fiercer than ever, and even more direct. Relationships. In a snap of the fingers and a poof, and it would be gone. Gaber was the most panicky. His investment this time around was unprecedented. Although it was not all his body and house, it was more than 2/3 of his life savings. The last time Jasper had gambled, and he had not followed. This time he had, but it seemed like he was unlucky. Of course, it was not just about his personal loss, but he had already made his guarantees to his family, and also brought in many people. If the news of a crumble leaked out, unimaginable. But panicking was useless. If one's specialty was of no help to the problem, then no amount of effort would remedy things. This was not even a problem of money. All eyes were trained on Yan Xiaozu. Big brother, if you have a trump card, now would be the time to pull it, right? The rates that the major shipping companies had provided were unreasonable, they were purposely out to trip them. Margate Interstellar Airline had bypassed them to directly negotiate with Maklu. This was more than vengeance now. If they still could not secure the custom permits for the route after using every trick in their book, then the Maklu situation would change. Even with the support of Tita Star, the situation might very well end up in bidding. Once bidding started, the Titan Chamber of Commerce, with no shipping experience, would not even be qualified to intervene. The support of the Tita people was useless. Once in the Milky Way Alliance, Tita Star also had to abide by the basic rules, and Mu Sen could not act with impunity. Once you broke the rules, how could you expect others to abide by them? Yan Xiaozu smiled slightly. At this moment, anybody could panic but him. On Maklu's side, I have no news yet, and that's the best news. Let those Margate bastards go bang around in the dark. We proceed as planned. As long as we are sure of our primary goals, we'll be fine. Laurel. Out of the 12 planets, which is the easiest to convince? Laurel's heart was beating wildly when she saw Yan Xiaozu's smile. He was always hard to read. Did he have a trump card or not? But she had already fired, and there was no pulling back the arrow now. This time around was different. She had brought in many VIPs, who were also invested. If it all came to naught, it would go beyond her personal loss to affect her reputation and dignity. How would she stand in the industry in the future? She would become a laughing stock. It has to be said that Yan Xiaozu's composure had given Gaber and Jasper a measure of confidence, but it was ineffective on Laurel. Putting on a brave front did not bring success. Laurel ordered her thoughts, and continued evenly, Tarwo Federation is the most likely possibility. Elections in half a year, and their current president, Mogadi, seems to be a level-headed person. But the population polls for his successor are not looking good, and his support rate is at a new low. And if the new route could be closed on schedule, it would be a great push for Mogadi's successor. That would undoubtedly be a huge help. Yan Xiaozu nodded. Then we will begin from Tarwo Federation. We will take the first, and then there will be a benchmark for further negotiations. The negotiations were like dominoes. As long as the first one was taken, the rest could be pushed over. We can give Tarwo Federation the best terms, and then get the word out that the later terms will be worse. Taking a bit of a detour is no big deal. Yan Xiaozu did not believe that these alliances were that stubborn. For the prophets, they all looked adamant. All he had to do was find a gap, and they would eventually crack. Whether Wang Zheng had a solution or not, he could not sit idly by. He would bite his own path of blood. Regardless of how Yan Xiaozu's battle was proceeding, Wang Zheng's own battle was bloody. Wang Zheng's attack was about to connect, when Mars blocked it and instantly grabbed Wang Zheng. Wang Zheng immediately shrugged it off. In mid-air, just as he was about to peel away, Mars unleashed a terrifying springing kick. Fatal scorpion sting. Ping! Wang Zheng was sent tumbling, limbs askew. Mars, balancing on one leg, looked extremely menacing. From mid-air, Wang Zheng rolled and landed. Boom! This was a real hit. His back was turned, and his target clear. He was already down, and one serious blow would see him gravely injured, if not dead. This was the killer move of the Heavenly Overlord attack. This was different from Mecha. Human bodies had too many weak points, and they couldn't all be defended, no matter how much one trained. Zhang Zun had seen it as well. He was speechless, as though his own backbone had been smashed. It was over, but Wang Zheng suddenly stood up from the ground and stretched. His bones cracked, and he smiled. That was some kick. Mars' pupils contracted. He knew the power of that kick. Although he had felt the resistance from Wang Zheng's back, normal people could not train the backbone. Had he miskicked? Impossible. Although Wang Zheng's body was strong, he did not have the muscle to do it. More accurately, his muscles were not sufficiently developed to do such refined defenses. For example, Wang Zheng's attack just now had been repelled by thick muscles. The way Mars saw it, this could be called controlling type muscle. But there was no time to dwell on this. Wang Zheng had already come flying at the speed of wind, a leg raised. Mars frowned. Was he asking to die? It looked ferocious, but he had begun the kick too early. As Wang Zheng approached, a high whip flew towards Wang Zheng's crotch. This was a classic combo breaker. It was not aiming to render him impotent, but it could have such an effect. But Wang Zheng sucked in drastically, and made a mind-boggling flip in midair to dodge Mars' attack. He gripped Mars' skull, forcing Mars to control his head. He was too late to catch Wang Zheng's hand, and a huge wave of vortex energy sped through. Mars had dodged the attack on his head like lightning, but his body was thrown. Wang Zheng had used his momentum to spin, landing back facing Mars. He lashed out like a rabbit shrugging free of a hawk. Boom! Mars was sent flying. In terms of agility, Mars was slightly behind Wang Zheng. He twisted in midair and landed on one leg, creating a crater where he stood. Wang Zheng landed, but did not pursue. Hee. It has to be said that Mars used his musculature well. He knew he could not dodge it, and his muscles had reacted rapidly to block the kick and protect him from harm. Mars had a towering stature. Roughly, his chest thickness was 2.5 times that of Wang Zheng's, a completely different strength class. Normally, such muscle density would affect one's agility. A fighter did not need such a sculpted body, but Mars' muscles were definitely not for show. Every inch of muscle was filled with power and agility. It changed quickly, and allowed the Heavenly Overlord arts to be channeled through every corner of his body. Mars shed his tattered clothes. This guy was scary. Every inch of his body looked like a living creature. It was a terrifying scene. Zhang Zun was close by. From what he could see, Wang Zheng's attack had been completely blocked. It looked bleak, but he was not injured. It was Wang Zheng after all. How had he done it? Wang Zheng's muscles were not such an excellent, meat shield. Could he have put iron into his backbone? Mars took a deep breath, and his body trembled. With a pop, the excess energy on his body dissipated. Such shedding abilities were already at the level of a human weapon. Mars' ability X was terrifying, but compared to his physical skills, it was nothing. He had completely shaped himself into an invincible weapon. Wang Zheng was quite excited. Such an opponent was rare. A completely different class. Often, overwhelming power was paired with poor agility, and excellent technique lacked muscle power. Mars had actually achieved the best of both. He did not know how he had done it, but Wang Jung knew that he could not train his muscles to that level. He did not have the ability. This was the difference in their nature. Wang Jung, those attacks will not cause me any damage. Stop holding back, Mars said. He had chosen such a non-ideal situation to act because he knew that too many were looking to finish off Wang Jung. A quiet week had not meant that they had given up, or were scared off by Wang Jung. Rather, they were completing the basic requirements of the competition, and securing tags. What came next was to finish off Wang Jung with all their might. And why give them the chance when he could take it himself? Wang Jung did not want to fight Mars under such circumstances. It was a waste. An exchange and a battle looked close, but were completely different notions. It was best to exchange with Mars, but Wang Jung was faced with a life and death battle. He might not die, but a loss would see everything between Wang Jung and Aina disappear in smoke. A loser had no grounds to spout nonsense in front of Kashan. If she was in a good mood, she could entertain him, but if she was not, then she had ample reason to deal with Wang Jung in other ways. To Wang Jung, that was actually a life and death battle. Just as Mars had said, he had wanted to conserve energy, but that was too difficult against Mars. Mars knew that Wang Jung was conflicted. Even given that Wang Jung could beat him, he would have to reveal his trump card. And once done, the next opponent that Wang Jung faced would be even harder. And he might be injured. But this was not part of Mars' concerns. He simply wanted to know what level Wang Jung's physical condition was at. And if he could help him break through. Seeing Mars' body charge with power, and his impregnable stance, Wang Jung shrugged exasperatedly. You're forcing me. Instantly, Wang Jung's aura spread out. The onlookers were increasing. Wang Jung had to make a move, although he thought it was a waste. Wang Jung's aura barreled down on Mars like a tornado. Mars not only did not shrink away, but was filled with the need for battle. This was more like it. Suppress him. Impossible. The heavenly overlord attack was indomitable everywhere. Kill. Kill. Both shouted at the same time, charging towards the middle. Mars' intention was to tell Wang Jung to use his ultimate move, and pit it against him. But in truth, Wang Jung did not want to. But both had their own reasons. Wang Jung did not want to use his full strength not just because of the next battles, but because to gain new enlightenment with Mars, purely killing moves would not do. The reason, as both neared, Wang Jung's shoulder dipped slightly. Mars' eyes were watching, rapt. He knew that Wang Jung's best physical move was an elbow technique to the face. A vicious attack that expended all his strength. Mars had no intention of defending. He would see if this attack of Wang Jung lived up to its name. Boom. The energy exploded, and Mars was open-mouthed. How did this happen? In front of the screen, 3 excited generals who had been anticipating a bloody battle were shocked as well. That was impossible. Nonplussed, Mars fell to the ground. Even in his last moment, Mars was unconvinced. Even he would not have thought that things would end up this way. The surrounding forest quietened. An aura of fear permeated. This was Mars. How could he have fallen in one hit? Wang Jung straightened up and beckoned Zhang Zun, help me carry him over. Zhang Zun immediately came over to help Mars. When he looked at Wang Jung again, it was not just with respect, but reverence. He could feel Mars' weight, and the power contained within his body. This meant that Mars had been felled before he had even used his power. How was that possible? Any pro, especially at Mars level, would expend all their energy once they sensed danger. This was true the more dangerous the situation was. Had Wang Jung's attack speed and change actually surpassed Mars' instinct for danger? Normally in such a situation, it meant that there was an outclass between the opponents. Was there one between Mars and Wang Jung? If that was the case, then who at SIG could stop Wang Jung? Zhang Zun's instinct told him that the gap between the two was not that big. Even if Wang Jung was a little stronger, there was a limit. But how could this have happened? What had just occurred? Zhang Zun did not know. Given his level, he could not comprehend it. Aragorn brooded for a while, then disappeared into the forest. He needed to work out what had just happened. Due to his angle and the distance, he had not seen that blow clearly. Could Mars be faking? It did not seem too likely. Against outsiders, arbiters were very united. Even if they did not help each other, they would not pull one another down. Without clarifying, Aragorn could not make impulsive moves. Wang Zheng, Mars. Wang Zheng smiled as though nothing had happened, and sat back down again. Let him rest for a while. He'll wake after 5 or 6 hours. Zhang Zun nodded. Why were there no scars on Mars' body? More accurately, there seemed to be a red mark on his chest. Something seemed wrong. In the monitoring room, Bolette, Lin Hong and Sarabujal were stunned as well. This segment, Sarabujal said. From the side, the personnel immediately jumped on it. Given the gods' eye and their own experience, these three should be able to see it most clearly. But in that instant, their eyes could not even follow the events. Out of the three, Sarabujal had the most experience, but even he did not dare to make a judgment. The slow-motion camera immediately appeared on the right side of the screen. Wang Zheng and Mars had fought hard. Mars' explosiveness was first-rate. To play with speed and agility was asking for it in close combat. Attack rate and power were the deciders in such close melees. As Mars was attacking, his right fist had flown out, and his left shoulder had braced itself. He did not need to dodge Wang Zheng's elbow. He wanted to test its power. Mars had truly believed that this elbow could not fell him. But Wang Zheng's right arm had shook, and it was not the elbow move. Just as he closed, his left hand flashed out. But this distance. It was a finger. Wang Zheng's finger had jabbed Mars, and the change had been uncannily quick. It was not that Mars could not dodge, but that there was no need to. Such a violent last-minute attack switch was the poorest choice. Forget a finger, even if Wang Zheng had delivered a few punches, it would be ineffective. Mars had been confident that he could connect his punch. But that finger. In that instant, the screen blurred, and the technicians thought there was an error and hurriedly checked. The finger was sharp on the screen, but the attack was blur. Sarabujal waved them off, gesturing for the technicians to cease their fiddling. That finger had instantly stopped all of Mars' movements, and turned him rigid. Lin Hong was silent, but his eyes were filled with excitement. In all of physical techniques development, Aslan's military colleges had stood at the forefront of the Milky Way alliance. Their training and their breathing techniques were also understood by the Aslan Royal College, even if it was not yet widespread. But even so, he had never seen such mysterious power. Bolette also did not know where that power had come from. Finger strength is concentrated, but also frail. How could a body like Mars not block it? These two wouldn't be putting on a show, would they? Of course, Bolette also knew that was not very possible. In truth, even he did not know what to say anymore. Sarabujal was still silent. He was still watching. Both Bolette and Lin Hong could feel the growing aura from Sarabujal, and a breeze was actually blowing in the room. But the gust of wind quickly vanished. Sarabujal was a pro. Sarabujal nodded apologetically. Sorry. I did not think that this class of student would appear at SIG. Sarabujal, stop prevaricating. Say what you see. I know I'm not as good as you in this regard, Bolette said. This Manalasuo general never cared about pride. He only cared about learning. Actually, Mars had lost from the start, Sarabujal said. Mars only had the intent to kill, but not the power. Bloodthirst creates the aura, and killing power kills. Creating the aura, but not unleashing killing moves. But Wang Zheng could unleash killing moves with his bloodthirst. Sarabujal pressed the pause button. Mars' eyes were completely different from the look in Wang Zheng's eyes. One could deceive an opponent, but not oneself. Mars only had the intent to battle. Under such circumstances, it was ideal if both sides could constantly exchange. But Wang Zheng had no time or ability to do so, which was why he had unleashed a killing move. But this killing move was not so easily unlocked at the press of a button. Similarly, against Mars, Wang Zheng had no killing power either. But in that instant, Wang Zheng had brought it to bear. Lin Hong frowned. I understand what you mean. Wang Zheng can switch at any time between bloodthirst and killing power. But even so, his killing power had not killed him. This was also the question on Bolette's mind. Sarabujal stared hard at Wang Zheng sitting composed. When he had reached such a state, He had been 38, and already a leader in the army. After killing countless, he could control his aura at will. This was something that countless life and death moments had brought to him. From the fear of killing to numbness, and finally to understanding. It had been a long-drawn process. But this Wang Jung was so young, and he already understood. In this regard, he was 2 whole tiers above Mars. More accurately, he had capitalized on Mars' flaw to deliver the blow. If killing power and killing power matched, Mars might not be much weaker than Wang Jung. But bloodthirst on killing power. That was too wide. It was difficult to switch. Just like a machine starting up had to warm up and get into gear, people were much the same. Of course, this was not the main point, because killing power was only a state of mind. Unless you were a god, you could only hold it for so long. That was why Wang Jung had not killed Mars in the end. He had switched it again, and not brought his killing power to the peak. More importantly was Wang Jung's move. Bolette and Lin Hong looked at each other. With a little prompting from Sarabujal, they had understood. But that finger. Sarabujal shook his head slightly. Even I have no idea what that move is. Perhaps some secret physical technique from Earth. Actually, Sarabujal knew. But he would not say it. Bolette rolled his eyes. He knew that Sarabujal was lying. From the side, Lin Hong seemed to have recalled something, and actually shivered. In that instant, if Bolette could not make the lateral connection, he did not deserve to be standing there. But Bolette was shocked. It was not that he had recognized the move, but to execute a physical move that the monitors could not capture, one type of person could do that. That type of person was restricted in every country. Every country had to strictly monitor them with no emotion. Heaven rank pro. Heaven rank. Wang Jung was clearly not there, and that was clear. In the Greatest King competition not long ago, Wang Jung seemed to have touched the threads of Heaven rank ability X, and now he had displayed a similar level of physical ability. This was just a 21-year-old kid. If he had been Arbiter, or Aslan, other countries would be worried without a doubt. Because this was the greatest possibility that of a common Heaven rank existence. And any Heaven rank expert in today's Milky Way alliance was like a nuclear weapon in the past. He was only 21. But luckily, he was from Earth. This meant that everybody had an opportunity to win him over. And Bolette's heart was itching. Manilasuo's need was too pressing. Such a young and elite leader could lead an entire cohort. This aura was not something that just any excellent fighter had, but he did. And he had actually brought a bunch of solar system rookies onto the stage of SIG. That was an intangible power. It was command ability. In the last IG, Bolette had been moved, but this boy did not seem interested, plus there had been too many variables. He was too young. And now it looked like he had underestimated this guy. Vincent seemed to be on a good relationship with him, and there was the incident of the Golden Wheel Battle King. This meant that he was destined to be with Manilasuo. Perhaps this was a breakthrough, and the terms would be good. For such talent, he could have anything he asked for. Lin Hong definitely knew about the affairs of the royal family. This kid and Aina's business had indeed caused the imperial family problems. Even if Wang Jung was a Heaven rank pro, it would not do. Besides, for Aina's other half to be such a pro might not be a good thing as well. It was important that the princess's other half have enough status to increase Aslan's influence. It was a pity that this kid could not have set eyes on anybody but Aina. That was why he had approved when he heard that Dong and Wang Jung were being match-made. If there was a way to keep Wang Jung on Aslan, that would be best. Perhaps it was just Arbiter that was helpless, because Arbiter was not a hospitable country. The strongest would come from Arbiter. Only, a formidable opponent could only raise Arbiter's will to fight. Aragorn's reaction was the right one. Without understanding the issue, one should not act impulsively. He believed that Aragorn could see it clearly. At the same time, he also had confidence in his eldest disciple to win, perhaps even kill him off. This was the of Sarabujal's heart. Arbiter's ambition. Of course, it was only an ideal. There were too many opponents and enemies that Arbiter longed to be rid of in this world. In actuality it was impossible. That was why the best way was to strengthen themselves. Ruoliu, didn't you say your family's setup is the best in the Milky Way alliance? Why can't we see it clearly? You three stop nattering. Let me adjust it. I don't believe that he can flip out a blur. Yang Ruoliu said. Her small hands flew around quickly, and was currently refining the screen. Damn, this Mars is really hollow. He looked so sturdy, but fell to a finger. Maybe I could defeat him, Qian Shuidi grumbled. She had been ready to see an epic fight, but this arbiter brave who had been praised to the skies had fallen. Mars' ability is unquestionable. This guy is on the prime grooming list of arbiters' younger generation. Anybody on this list is at least a general in the future, Yang Ruoliu said busily. The screen had been cleaned. Wang Zheng's hand appeared, but it was still a distance away from Mars. No contact. In the next instant, Mars was unmoving. Are they acting? Dong could not resist asking. No, this Wang Zheng is really interesting. I haven't met such an interesting person in a long time. Look at this, Yang Ruoliu said. A little circle appeared. This place is blurry and cannot be displayed. It's a space issue. It means that overwhelming energy was produced, and instantly appeared, creating heat. In professional terms, you wouldn't understand it. This means that Wang Zheng had truly made an attack. He did not hit because if he had contacted, Mars would have turned to ash. Yang Ruoliu was clapping her hands excitedly. It's always been a myth. I didn't think anyone could do it. Only Lin Weiyan was not surprised. She knew that Wang Zheng could definitely do it. After Wang Zheng had felled Mars, it was quiet. After a few waves, those who bore him ill will had slinked off. Those that stayed were here only to observe as well. As for taking action, forget it. That was asking to die. Even if it had been faked, anyone who could get Mars to cooperate would be no one to cross. Mars came to a lot earlier than Wang Zheng had expected, after slightly more than an hour. Wang Zheng knew that his own atomic bomb had not been trained to completion, but that situation had called for it. In truth, it had been 50-50. If it had failed, then he would have to enter an intense fight. After Mars woke, he immediately got up. Wang Zheng was a little surprised as well. This body was ridiculously good. Actually, Mars was still frowning from the pain that shook his whole body. Every bone felt like it had been shattered, but the arbiter endurance was legendary. How's your hand? Mars' first words. Wang Zheng smiled. Broken. Mars brooded for a while. Actually, he already knew what the problem was. Wang Zheng saw it better than him. If it had really been a life and death battle, how could he not have drawn the titanium knife? But Wang Zheng had switched to killing power even faster than he did. Could he have been in a war before? Mars did not understand the blow to himself. It must have been some internal energy explosion. In that instant, he felt like he was dying, but he also felt like Wang Zheng had not perfected it. There had definitely been some instability, that only those who experienced it would know. The strain of such an attack was huge. If Wang Zheng had completely mastered it, his hand would have sustained damage, although not that seriously. Mars threw a tag onto the pile. I owe you one. Wang Zheng had not killed him, maintaining his line at an exchange. But he could not at least return the gesture. Of course, he would think of ways to take more tags. Recently, there have been a lot of people bothering me. How about you hold the fort with me, and then we're even? Wang Zheng said. Mars nodded. He did not like to owe a favor. This was best. After all, they were both representatives of Elite Academy X. A loss was a loss. Besides, to be able to observe him up close was a rare opportunity as well. Mars closed his eyes. The heavenly overlord attacks Kai made the rounds within his body, expelling any remaining energy. He considered Wang Zheng's finger. He had used the elbow technique as a feint, but that energy had been astounding. He could not ask about it. That would be childish. But he had experienced it. He would work it out. Mars ordered his senses and entered a meditative state. Zhang Zun knew the gap between him and these two. The sky was darkening. He could knock up something to eat. Mars checked his own wounds. They were indeed not light. He had best not make any major moves in the next few days. Luckily, the Van family was known for their superior constitution, or he would already be a goner. Defeated, Mars did not despair, but instead seemed content. On the other side, Aragorn had hit on the answer. The issue should have been with the switch of bloodthirst and killing power. Could Mars really not switch? That was impossible. He must have done it on purpose. Although he did not know the reason, Mars had never intended to go till the death with Wang Zheng. The only problem was, Aragorn had no idea what was up with Wang Zheng's attack. After eating, Wang Zheng also entered a restful state. Zhang Zun was indeed the most relaxed. In Mars' mind, he still held the memory of that attack's power. Very solid, and the explosive effect was unusual. This was Mars' goal. He wanted to test Wang Zheng's ultimate blow personally, and then share this experience with Olivia's. He was on the way out, and Olivia's fight had just begun. He could not always be beaten by Wang Zheng. Mars had to understand Wang Zheng for himself. Although the arbiters were cold, they were rather principled. In the switching of bloodthirst and killing intent, Mars could have done it as well. But in this battle with Wang Zheng, it would be foolish for both parties to be injured. His goal had been met. He wanted to test Wang Zheng's fighting power. Of course, he had bet on it because he understood Wang Zheng. Everyone had their own principles and bottom line. Out of those at this level of ability, Wang Zheng was one of the more honorable ones. He himself would not release killing power, and yet force Wang Zheng to a battle. But Wang Zheng would not release a killing blow. Zhang Zun, from the sidelines, had known it. Such people were rare. Arbiters were not as simple as they appeared to be. If they truly were, their country would have long collapsed. Even if they were on different sides, Mars found it hard to dislike this guy. It was a blessing to have such a person as a battle buddy. SIG was Mars' final stop at Elite Academy X, and also the complete and final ending of his student life. He might never have a say in his own future again, and he might only take commands. But before he left, he wanted to experience this battle and atmosphere again. That was why his only goal at SIG was enjoyment. Olivius was strong, but too young. Compared to Wang Zheng, he seemed to always lack a little. Mars could not put his finger on it. But as the elder brother, this was as much as he could help him. Wang Zheng was a clever person. Since he had dared to do so, then he must have saved a trump card for himself. In truth, he had offended too many, so direct battles would fail. There was a limit to what human bodies could take. Mars was looking forward to see who the next to act would be. Aslan, Arbiter, or Manalasuo's Jondi. None of them should be crossed easily. And the scary thing was that even if you won a Pyrrhic victory, that would only make it easier for the next person. The less was known, the higher the anticipation. Aragorn had come by. Although his presence had just wafted by, Mars was too familiar with the flavor of the Warrior Soul College people. Although Aragorn had been scared away, the nicknamed New Warrior Soul of Warrior Soul College would think of something soon enough and return with a vengeance. On the other island, a Saruman snake member hunt was ensuing. The core was Aslan, Arbiter, and Manalasuo's members. Although they had gradually dispersed, this was a classic bandwagon. First remove target number 1. Originally, Saruman Snake was already on the chopping block, thanks to the ostentatious name of Greatest King, and now they were asking for it. Achilles and Lai Shin were indeed a strong combination, but they had been eliminated after consecutive battles. They were completely overrun. There were many on the island of their caliber, and once they had become target number 1, they could not hold out at all. They could not possibly not rest at all. Achilles and Lai Shin had opened their energy shields, defeated. Both were injured and could not run. Neither had slept in 3 days, and they could only surrender. It was hard to hold out, and hard to surrender. This meant that Saruman Snake's members would flounder completely. The hovercraft loaded them up and ascended. Looking at the island below, Achilles and Lai Shin were unbelievably frustrated. Just as they should have stayed low profile, Wang Zheng had called maximum attention to them. How are our chances? Lai Shin smiled bitterly. Basically none. If even the 2 of us are in such a state, the rest must be worse off. Without his ability, Zhang Shan has no way to hide. Mu Zhen's size is not easy to conceal, and Vincent, Achilles could not finish his sentence. His physical technique was not as good as theirs. This time, Wang Zheng sighed. Too rash, Achilles said. It's us that were too weak. If I were Wang Zheng, I would have stood out as well. You can't just watch your woman snatched away before your very eyes. Are you a man? Are you a human? Lai Xin rolled her eyes. Achilles grimaced. It was not that he did not support him, but Saruman's snake was about to become the biggest joke. And if Saruman's snake was eliminated, then Wang Zheng could not achieve his goal. Wang Zheng and Kashan were on completely different levels. It was an unequal fight. It was not that Lai Xin was ignorant, but Martians were not as emotional as Moon people. You of the Moon lack that overwhelming dominance. An inexperienced person defeats a master by throwing out the rules of traditions. Before the results are out, we might still have a chance. You think? Achilles asked. Lai Xin was stunned, and did not speak. Actually, in her heart, having made it this far was already admirable. At least they had taken the greatest king. Even if they met their end here, they had at least fulfilled Wang Zheng's wish and brought Saruman's snake this far. Achilles sensed Lai Xin's gloom. He knew that Lai Xin had longed for such a stage. Actually, I hold some hope. Wang Zheng always has a plan. Although we didn't get any tags, if Wang Zheng gets enough tags, we can still pass. Perhaps, Lai Xin said. Just as Lai Xin and Achilles had guessed, Vincent had already given up as well, although he was uninjured. He had met Manilasuo's members. Only Zhang Shan and Mu Zhen were still holding out. Mu Zhen thought differently from the rest. This was not a game. To the Tita people, any battle was a war, and there had to be a winner and loser, life and death. He had entered this island be survival, and he would triumph or die. He would not lose face for Ada. Of course, Mu Zhen was no fool. After making that blunder and being chased, Mu Zhen had entered the forest. With the Tita blood, and at least half of humankind's intellect, Mu Zhen had discovered something after a few clashes. This bunch of humans were average at jungle warfare. After losing their ability X's, they could not even compare. To humans, the jungle was a threat, but to the Tita people, it was their home. The only tricky thing was the laser guns. Humans were not bad at sniping, but Tita people had dealt with similar attacks in their own duels. Their agile surveillance in this aspect was very effective. More importantly, the Tita people could camouflage with the forest seamlessly, from body to presence. This advanced concealment technique was something other warriors could not hope to match. That was why Mu Zhen was still holding out. A survival ability that was at odds with his physical stature. Although he did not really understand, Mu Zhen vaguely knew that this was connected with Ada's woman. That was basically the Tita people's Virgin Mary. Whoever dared to snatch her must go through him first. On a faraway stellar region, Meng Tian's troop was already fairly deep. Their deep exploration target was closer and closer. Falcon 7 calling base comm, requesting recall. I repeat, Falcon 7 calling base comm, requesting recall. Over. This is base comm. Falcon 7 recall authorized. Recall channel B23, I repeat. A foreign stellar region, and a symbol marked it as Milky Way Alliance 999's troop, currently on an exploration mission. The troop's two motherships linked up, sitting as steadily as if they were in their designated spaces in a space station. One after another, small scout ships were released, flying in and out like worker bees. Nobody expected interstellar exploration to surge forward. All movements proceeded as per the plan, and they avoided danger while abiding by the rules of exploration. Planetary composition, stellar mass, celestial gravitational relationship, meteorite belts, dark matter distribution, curvature spatial density, scientific calculations. This would be a long-term project. Exploration and reconnaissance was a precise process, and each step had strict movement regulations. 13 warships had moved out on their mission simultaneously. With the mothership as the core, they had carried out patrolling and security missions. It was possible that attackers would appear within their defense perimeter. Pirates, anti-Milky Way Alliance groups, hitherto undiscovered civilizations. Far away from the radiation of the Milky Way Alliance, even a large Milky Way Alliance fleet did not spell safety. The most common enemy was anti-Milky Way Alliance groups. In the era of the Milky Way Alliance's reign, such groups were not poor. At their best, they were wayward civilizations that were anti-human, and like weeds that could not be eliminated. Not every alien civilization was happy to submit to human order. Each time, they would conduct suicidal attacks without technological aid. But they were large in numbers, and the threat could not be overlooked. Warship number 12, under Meng Tian's command, had just finished a 10-hour-long, Level 1 security reconnaissance mission, and was gliding towards the dock that the mothership had opened, in preparation for maintenance. As the warship docked, the main engines were on standby. More than 10 maintenance mecha moved about their checks unhurriedly. All stations note, this rest time is 16 hours. After individual watches are delegated, disembarking in shifts is permitted. After finishing the last guard duties, Meng Tian breathed a sigh of relief as she returned to the captain recess room. 8 hours of non-stop Level 1 security reconnaissance was no easy mission, even if they had not met with trouble. Especially the captain job, which needed more than just calm. Very, very tiring. She wanted to rest, to close her eyes. Be in a dream world where she was also sleeping. But with a light flick of her finger, the screen in the recess room switched on, displaying the information, Captain's Advanced Development Course Part 2. She had not reached the point where she could rest. Ascending to the position of captain meant that there were many things she had to learn. Far more than her fatigue. Not many people left the ship. Although the two ship cores had linked, and it was like a space city, the inside was not that different from the warship. It was just that because it had been lived in by many, it was softened by a more human design, and the atmosphere did not feel as severe as that of the warship. The rest area of the warship was lively. After a mug of drink, no one cared who was an officer, or a fighter, or engineer. A common interest could strike up a conversation. The biggest question was definitely the babe replacement captain. Say, you think Captain Meng will remain on our ship 12? Definitely. At that time, we'll raise a group request to keep Captain Meng. Lead fighter Wylan was a rough one. His two eyes were bright, and when he spoke, his voice rumbled like thunder. Wylan. Among the fighters, Meng Tian was especially favored. The first captain who could best them in a fight. And a babe. The ship's assembly every day with the captain used to be the most boring part of a fighter's day. A whole bunch of crap repeated day after day. Although they understood, it was boring. And now, it was like a concert. Even before reporting time, they were all assembled and ready in front of the screen. You think the captain has a boyfriend? Rubbish. Definitely not. Please, no. Well, what do you think? Piss off. Who do you take me for? Do you know what admiring respect is? But for real, Captain's stony face is already so alluring. If she smiles, then we'll be bamboozled to death on the spot for sure. They were all flying the Meng flag high, but they were all clear that drooling was about the limits of what they could do. SSSH. Tone it down, Menga's here. A few fighters glanced towards the door. A few figures were walking into the recessed area. 3 guys and a girl, all wearing officer uniforms. The 3 guys looked over with little emotion. Instantly, it was quiet. Normally, ground soldiers were unafraid of scoundrels. As long as they were not ground soldiers, then even if the Emperor of Heaven himself came down, they would leave him bloody even if they could not win. But these few youngsters were different, especially that Menga from Heaven's Arrow Federation. He was a monster. Previously, there had been a scuffle, and in the end, thinking about it still gave them the goosebumps. Demon Menga. Shu Yi smiled. It's fine. We're just here for a meal. Lighten up. The few of them sat down, and the conversation topic was amazingly Meng Tian. Meng Tian was undoubtedly the student with the highest career potential from Milky Way Galaxy Military College. Replacement captain was still captain, and for a far-reaching exploration team as well. With this experience, even if she was not within the Milky Way Alliance system, the captain's position would be her minimum position anywhere else. If she stays with the Milky Way Alliance, the most likely course is to send her for the captain's master's course. Graduation in a year, then she can be a proper captain, Shu Yi said as she smiled. Her eyes were casting about jealously. Her looks could not compare, and her quality was said to be inferior as well. Even if she had better luck, she was unhappy that Menga was chasing Meng Tian. She was also from Heaven's Arrow Federation, and she had liked Menga for a while now. If it was me, I would return to Earth. I would at least be a major general there, with at least 5 warships under my command. Yuan Jing from Big Bear Federation. At this moment, he was lazily leaning back on his chair, with his two legs propped ungainly on the table. Speaking of Earth, a sneer curled on his mouth. Of course, Meng Tian was not bad, but Earth was nothing. Shove off. Pavel was the biggest of the four. He was from Clark Galaxy, and 2 meters tall. He was even thicker than a bear. Out of the four, he was the oldest and had the most battle experience. But he also spoke the least. Yuan Jing shrugged and retracted his legs off the table without argument. It was a joke that Pavel had a nickname, the demon who dismantles mecha with his bare hands. He was not afraid, but crossing him was tiring. In truth, even if it was some peon, Yuan Jing would save the trouble as well. A lazy man's world first considered what was easiest, and then how to live a life free of trouble. All four were genius-level elites who had accomplished much on this mission. They had risen after their stint on Ship 12 and were in the same position as Meng Tian. Now the positions they were at all had replacement as a prefix. It could be said that Ship 12 was the promotion ship, specially prepared for Galaxy Military College students of solid background. Of course, it was also testing if these bright ones had the ability to rise in position. A deep place in the stellar region. An unmanned scouting drone was surveying a planet at speed. Each photograph was shot with a telescopic lens and relayed back. The drone was quickly approaching the dark side of the planet, when there was a ripple through space. It seemed like a ripple appeared on the still water. The drone disappeared. After an hour, a scouting ship appeared at the last known position of the drone. Strange, the signal was just ahead. How could it have disappeared? The scout troop looked at the signal on the screen. The unmanned drone was just ahead, the red signal bleeping. It was the distress call after it lost power. But within their vision, it was all void. Besides a brown and dreary planet, there was nothing to be seen. Hang on. This. Fire all engines. Emergency escape. Don't. Boom. The entire scout ship suddenly vanished in space. Only one distress signal continued to penetrate the void.